It's 2010. You're surfing the web after school. You see a meme. You think to yourself, exactly. I'd never be caught dead in those. Snap forward. It's 2022. You look down. What's that on your feet? Yeah, newsflash. Crocs are cool now. In fact, people are obsessed with them. But how did the world's ugliest shoe go from global punchline to cult brand worth billions of dollars? Let me tell you, I study brands for a living, and Crocs managed to pull off one of the craziest brand turnarounds in history. They didn't just rebrand, they brainwashed the world. And the craziest part is they used techniques so subtle that most people didn't even realize it was working on them until it was too late. The first thing you need to know is that Crocs had a problem. Originally created as a slip-resistant boat shoe in 2002, their product did okay for about a decade. But by 2016, that momentum had completely dried up. As the head of marketing at Crocs himself put it,
"The world thought that we were a joke. We were definitely on the wrong end of culture."
Crocs had become known as the ugliest shoe in the world, and that reputation had began to kill their brand.
Our stock price was less than $7.
They knew they had to do something, so they took the first step that started it all. Instead of redesigning their shoe or trying to convince people it wasn't ugly, they reframed their ugliness as their superpower. How? By applying new logic to the brand. Ugly is different. Different is individual. Individual is one of a kind, and one of a kind is something to be proud of. And if you are different too, then you belong with Crocs. So their new tagline was born, "Come as you are." Now, this wasn't just a nice piece of copywriting. It actually tapped into a phenomenon in social science called the innovation diffusion theory, which is a theory that explains how new things spread. According to the theory, in society, there are 5 groups of people: the innovators, the early adopters, the early majority, the late majority, and the laggards. Research shows that if you can target the early adopters and the innovators, it can set off a powerful chain reaction that later leads to mass adoption, pretty much guaranteeing the success of your innovation. Crocs' tagline, "Come as you are," spoke exactly to the identity of the early adopter. Those who saw themselves as the outliers, the risk takers, people who felt a little different, like they didn't quite fit into society. Crocs had locked in their new logic, positioning, target audience, and tagline. But that wouldn't be enough in itself for global domination. This is when they moved on to step 2. In the decade since its launch, Crocs had been trying to claw back profit. They had over-diversified their product line within an inch of its life. And there's a saying in advertising, if you're selling to everyone, you're selling to no one. So it was time for them to align their product around their new strategy. They cut hundreds of distracting product lines and doubled down on a single shoe, the clog. Why the clog? Because it was so fugly. It perfectly represented their new ugly as a badge of honor ethos. Now, with everything in place internally, it was time to get this show on the road externally. That's when they initiated step number 3, the most diabolical step of all. By the way, my mission with this channel is to help you find your thing and become a category of one. After working with some of the biggest icons in the world, I realized that they were all using the same brand strategies, but keeping them locked up in billion-dollar boardrooms. So that's what I'm doing here. I am ungatekeeping these strategies for the founders and creators. If you want to know more about how to use these strategies to build your magnetic brand, I'm going to leave some links in the description for you. But anyway, back to step number 3. They borrowed cultural cool. Now they knew they were a brand for the early adopters, the outsiders. Now they just had to convince the public of it by relentlessly affiliating themselves with people in culture who represented these very same values. First, there was Post Malone, the ultimate early adopter. He was pretty much the come as you are poster boy. Post Malone's whole brand was about doing exactly that, being who you were and not being embarrassed about it. So no wonder when they dropped the Post Malone Crocs collab in 2018, they sold out in a matter of hours and increased Crocs revenue for that quarter by 7%. And the genius of it was that this collab just felt so genuine. It was integrated, not forced, and people could sense that. Then came the Bad Bunny collab, Balenciaga, SZA, Justin Bieber. Crocs' cultural standing snowballed. And that is when they started step number 4. Now they had the cultural cool and people were starting to pay attention. That was all well and good, but Crocs knew that they needed to drive an emotional connection with consumers. So that's when they introduced what's called the IKEA effect. Have you ever noticed how you love something more if you helped create it? That is the IKEA effect, which is a psychological bias where people place higher value to things that they put effort towards. It's named after IKEA because customers literally place more value on furniture that they helped create. You see the same thing with customizable drinks and your own name on your order at Starbucks, Fortnite skins, Build-A-Bear. And this is exactly why Crocs made sure to promote their customizable customizable gibbets charms. With the addition of gibbets, they didn't just sell clogs. They sold a blank canvas for people's identity. Every charm was an opportunity for consumers to express themselves, to come as they are. Personalization equals emotional ownership, and emotional ownership is how casual buyers turn into devoted fans. Now it was time for step number 5, lean into polarization. With a solid identity and emotionally invested fans, what Crocs did next was the one thing that most brands are terrified to do. They leaned into their haters.
I truly do not think people understand how ugly Crocs are. And
Crocs. The Crocs, man.
When someone said that they were anti-Crocs, that they despise Crocs, Crocs didn't hide from it because they knew that the more people mocked them, the more the true believers would dig in. What polarization does that's so powerful is it creates an in-group and out-group dynamic, which in turn enhances the feeling of belonging for the in-group. Crocs didn't try to win everyone's approval. They knew that the louder the out-group hated, the prouder the in-group felt. Today, Crocs sells more than $4 billion worth of these ugly shoes. What used to be a global punchline is now a global movement, a brand that people defend like it's part of who they are. So how can you apply the same strategy to pull off a Crocs-level brand transformation? Here's your 5-step blueprint. Step number 1, is define your brand logic. Find the flaw, the contradiction, or the thing that people tease you for, and reframe that as your superpower by applying new logic. Step number 2 is to simplify your offer. Cut everything that doesn't serve this new logic. Serve this one belief. Serve this one truth. Step number 3, borrow cultural credibility. Align yourself with people or brands who embody your values. Step number 4, activate the IKEA effect. Let your audience participate. When people feel like they're building something with you, they'll defend it like it's theirs. And step number 5 is to lean into polarization. Do not aim for everyone's approval, because every time someone says, I don't get it or I don't like it, your true fans will feel even prouder that they do. Crocs didn't change the shoe, they changed what the shoe meant. By turning their weakness into their biggest asset, they became magnetic. And if you want to use these same subtle branding strategies to build an iconic brand, I'll leave some links in the description. Okay, bye.